There's almost a business case to be made that you should open a business where you intentionally mess up with every single person you serve just so that you have the opportunity to turn it around.
Okay.
My favorite quote about hospitality comes from Maya Angelou. She said, "People will forget what you say, they will forget what you do, but they will never forget how you made them feel."
Right.
About a year ago, my wife and I were in Florida with my daughter. In my family, we travel for dessert.
Oh, yeah.
The Breakers is an old hotel that's been there for a very, very long time. The building itself looks almost like a castle. My daughter at the time was in her Frozen era. And as we're pulling up to the hotel, she says, "Daddy, is this Elsa's castle? Is this where Elsa lives?" And I said, "Yeah, this is Elsa's house," which in hindsight was not smart. Because when we get into the hotel, she looks at me and she goes, "Well, let's go meet Elsa." And I was like, uh-oh. And so we go to the restaurant. And as the maitre d' is seating us, I cheat ahead with him. And I say, "Hey, I need a favor." And so 30 minutes later, he does come back to the table. But somehow, in that 30 minutes, he has found and purchased a little plastic princess wand and a little plastic tiara.
Oh, wow.
And he comes up to my table. My daughter's name is Frankie. And he goes, "Miss Frankie, I'm so sorry to tell you, Elsa is away on business, but she heard you were here and she was so sad to miss you that she wanted to give you these gifts as a way of sending you her love." And guys, the look on my daughter's face, it reinforces this idea that sometimes the best way to love on somebody is to love on the people they love.
That's amazing.
他把一家二线餐厅带到了世界第一。Will Guidara 26岁时接手11 Madison Park 麦迪逊公园11号，并用11年的时间把这家餐厅送上了世界50家餐厅的榜首，米其林3星、纽约时报4星尽收囊中。但 Will 真正的过人之处是他对怎么做到极致，怎么真正打动人的独特理解，并把这些思想写成了一本叫做《服务不设限》的书，全球卖出超过100万本，连艾美奖剧集《熊家餐厅》都把它写进了剧情，而他本人也是这部剧的联合创始人之一。Will 方法论的核心藏在一根街边买来的2块钱的廉价热狗背后。有一天 Will 听到在餐厅用餐的一桌美食爱好者感叹，他们在纽约打卡了所有顶级餐厅，但却一次都没有尝过街头的热狗。几分钟之后，这位米其林3星餐厅的主理人亲自冲出门，在街角买回一根热狗，让米其林大厨在考究的瓷碟上装饰上番茄酱，郑重地端到他们面前。他说，我只想确保你们的美食之旅不留任何遗憾。不合常理却正是他奉行一生的信条。打动人心的从来都不仅仅是挑不出错，而是那句没有说出口的我把你放在心上。所以接下来你听到的远不止餐饮，它是关于怎么把一件平常的事儿做到让人一辈子记住，是关于怎么去带领一支真心待人的团队，是关于怎么去面对无法计算回报的投入和热忱，是关于怎么去在所有人都在说不值得的时候依然选择自己所相信的。接下来的这场对谈隔着一块屏幕和半个地球，我们依然清楚地感受到了人与人之间真实的连接具有多么打动人的力量。那现在请你和我们一起进入这场对谈。So I guess first I want to start show by welcoming you, Mr. Will Guidara. It's such an honor to have you here with us today. And
Thank you.
It's a true pleasure meeting you. I want to start with the question. I'll ask you about the hot dog story. It's such a classic already. I'm sure English audience are very familiar with it, but maybe not so much with our Chinese audience here. But instead of just asking you to tell the story again, I'm wondering if you could share with us a version that's unique to you right now, if there's something about a story that's only available for you at the moment that you can share with us.
So first of all, it is a pleasure to be with you both as well. And the idea that my book or books now have been translated over there, it's just amazing. And it gives me such joy to be able to talk to you about them. The hot dog story, what you're referencing, is one of the bigger stories in the book, and it's about dream weaving. And dream weaving is the term that I coined. And what it means is, and by the way, this is true in restaurants, but over the past few years, I found it to be true across so many different industries. It's been kind of wild. I now know of NFL teams and banks and prison systems and everything in between who now have Dreamweavers on their staffs.
Wow.
And a Dreamweaver's responsibility is to recognize that no matter what you do for a living, there is a product or service that you sell. And yet, my favorite quote about hospitality comes from Maya Angelou. She said, people will forget what you say, they will forget what you do, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
The Dreamweaver's responsibility is to be a resource so that the people on the team can get to know the people they are serving and come up with little or big ways, gestures that are specific to the individual that make them feel seen, that give them that sense of specialness, that sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. And the hot dog story was the first time I did it at 11 Madison Park that ultimately brought the idea to life. And that's when we added the position and started doing so much of that stuff. And those things are ultimately what brought us to the top. But your question is something specific to me. And I'll tell you, when you write a book about unreasonable hospitality, one of the cool perks is that a lot of people do really hospitable things for you. And so I'll tell you a story of something that happened recently for me. Mm-hmm. I have 2 children, a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. And about a year ago, my wife and I were in Florida with my daughter. We were in Palm Beach and we were staying at the Four Seasons. Now, my wife is a pastry chef. She has a bakery chain called Milk Bar. Most people would say she is the cooler of the two of us. And for that reason, in my family, we travel for dessert. And so we were staying at the Four Seasons, but there's another hotel down there called the Breakers. And the Breakers is an old hotel that's been there for a very, very long time. The building itself looks almost like a castle. And they're very famous for a key lime pie dessert that they serve there. It's a delicious dessert. The recipe hasn't changed in 100 years. And so at some point while we're down there, my wife and I load our little daughter up and we drive to the Breakers. Now, my daughter at the time was in her Frozen era, and I'm referencing the Disney movie Frozen. Yep. So she was obsessed with Elsa. And as we're pulling up to the hotel, she says, "Daddy,
do you want to build a snowman?"
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
And so she's like, "Daddy, is this Elsa's castle? Is this where Elsa lives?" And I said, "Yeah, this is Elsa's house," which in hindsight was not smart. Because when we get into the hotel, she looks at me and she goes, "Well, let's go meet Elsa."
Yep.
And I was like, uh-oh. And so we go to the restaurant. And as the maitre d' is seating us, I cheat ahead with him. And I say, "Hey, I need a favor. In 30 minutes, I need you to come back to the table. And I need you to tell my daughter that Elsa is away on business right now. That she sends her regards." And the guy's like, "I got you." And so 30 minutes later, he does come back to the table. But somehow in that 30 minutes, he has found and purchased a little plastic princess wand and a little plastic tiara.
Oh, wow.
And he comes up to my table. My daughter's name is Frankie. And he goes, "Miss Frankie, I'm so sorry to tell you, Elsa is away on business, but she heard you were here and she was so sad to miss you that she wanted to give you these gifts as a way of sending you her love." And guys, the look on my daughter's face.
Yep.
The reason I share that one is for a few different reasons. One, it did not cost them very much, but it was so unbelievably impactful. Mm-hmm. Two, it's a demonstration of the idea that, listen, the key lime pie was great. I don't remember it that well, but I will never forget the look on my daughter's face when she got those gifts. And three, it reinforces this idea that sometimes the best way to love on somebody is to love on the people they love.
That's amazing.
Not to mention the fact that, by the way, the look on the guy's face when he gave her those gifts, like it was clear that doing that made his night better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the story I'd offer in response to your question.
It definitely goes both ways.
When you embrace this approach to work, or honestly, it applies to life as well. These lessons are universal. I believe it does give you the greatest competitive advantage that exists, right? Like at the end of the day, especially in this time of AI and people feeling further and further apart from one another. When you can invest in relationships, it's the greatest competitive advantage that exists. But also, it just makes the work more fun. It is more fun to walk through life.
Yeah.
With this as your approach.
I guess when I was in elementary school, I heard my parents talking about like the restaurant industry being this very hardworking, that you have to wake up early, goes to bed very late. It's always a lot of things going on. Like when I heard the hot dog story, the first thing that came to my mind was like so much of an exceptional experience really comes down to how well you handle like certainty in a restaurant and like where stuff goes wrong all the time. And there's so much that you cannot control. Like how do you actually pull off like that kind of flawless sense of certainty for the guest when everything else is going on at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, listen, what you just said kind of almost opens up another door in the conversation, which is this. The hot dog story, there was nothing that had gone wrong with that table. This was just me trying to make a great experience, something that was memorable. And yet, you're right that in restaurants, like in any business, it's a human-powered organization, and human beings are imperfect, which means that mistakes will happen. And how you recover from those mistakes is what defines you. There's all this data around exactly this, that if you were to come into my restaurant or into any business and you have a good time, you're going to talk about it a little bit. If you come into the restaurant and you have a bad time, you're going to talk about it quite a bit more.
All the time.
But if you come into my business and you have a bad time, if we make a big mistake, and then I am willing to do whatever it takes to turn it around, to save that experience, to make you happy again, that is the thing you will talk about the absolute most. There's almost a business case to be made that you should open a business where you intentionally mess up with every single person you serve just so that you have the opportunity to turn it around. And hospitality is, in my view, the greatest way to turn it around. That when I make a mistake with you, I'm willing to say I'm sorry without it feeling like an admission of guilt or that it makes me weaker for having said it. And then I'm going to do something over the top that shows you, hey, I care enough about you and your business to do whatever it takes to make it right.
Yeah.
I think so many companies actually underinvest in customer recovery, that when they make a mistake, they try to do the bare minimum to make it right. And yet those same companies spend so much on marketing. I think we should spend less on marketing and more on salvaging the relationships we already have.
Right. Like, do you ever consider like the return on investment in this kind of like hospitality scenario?
Yes. Oh, of course. I mean, only for the fact that if there isn't a return and you invest money and time into something like this, eventually you'll go out of business, right? Like it either works or it doesn't work. But the return is harder to calculate.
Of course.
But that doesn't mean it matters less. In fact, it means it matters more. Sometimes when I'm speaking to companies and they're like, well, I can't figure out the return on this, so I don't think it's worth doing. And if I'm in a particularly persnickety mood, that's when I say, well, that means you're a manager, not a leader, because leaders actually have to go with their gut sometimes and do what they know is right and trust in the fact that over time it will pay off. But the reality is that when you're investing in relationships, the return is there. It just takes longer to realize. I'll give you an example, and I think what you're pointing to is smart, because I think too many people focus on the wrong metrics. They only use the ones that are easiest to calculate. I was talking to a police captain from a town in Colorado, and it was a town that was one of the least safe towns in the state. And he got there to take over the department and realized that all of the police officers, the way that they were evaluated on an annual basis was the number of tickets that they were writing and the number of arrests they were making. Now, that's not the point of a police force, right? Their entire role is, how do you create a safe environment? And the best way to create a safe environment is to operate in such a way where the community trusts you, and they feel you're approachable. And so he stopped using arrests and tickets as a metric and rather shifted to approachability and loyalty in the community. Now, here's the thing. That is much harder to measure, right? You can't do it nearly as easily. In fact, it got to the point where every year and a half or so, they would do a town-wide survey to gauge the approachability and the trust that the community had in the police. Harder to measure the return, takes a lot longer to realize. 4 years in, it was the safest town in Colorado. My point being that if you only pursue the metrics that are easy to measure, if you only focus on investments that have a very short-term ROI, you're never going to realize your full potential.
Well, I think that's a wonderful story. And also, I totally agree. Like, when you invest in short-term goals, you can never like actually compete and win in like competitions. But I guess my genuine question is like, when did you first realize that you should do these kind of like very long-term investments, like you said, in relationships, in things that you cannot calculate immediately? Because I think that's a very hard move. Like for me, when I started doing business, it's like I look at the ad platforms all day. I basically look at like how much money that I invested today and how much like I got in return or how much I lose. It takes a really big step for you to actually jump from looking at the data, looking at the day by day, and start doing those long-term investment. Was there like any point or like any reason that you started trying to do this kind of long-term investments?
Yeah, so I think a lot of companies find success through benchmarking themselves against the competition. Mm-hmm. They look at the competition, the people that are best in class in what they do, look at what those people do well, and try to copy those things. And by the way, that's important, right? When you're starting out in something, you need to shop the competition, see what they do well, and we don't need to create everything anew. Sometimes just taking what other people are doing really well and doing that well as well is the right first step towards success. But the other approach is called reverse benchmarking, which is a term that I did not come up with. In fact, a guy named Rory Sutherland, who's a master marketer from London, came up with this term after having read my book. It was kind of the word he used to articulate what I had done, but I really like it. And so now I use it. And
yeah, that's nice.
And what it means is you shop the competition to look at what other people are not focusing on.
Yeah.
And you focus on that. And what I realized is the restaurants that had been number one in the world, they were run by chefs. I'm not a chef. I've worked in kitchens over the course of my career, but only in pursuit of one day being a more empathetic leader. I'm a dining room guy. I've always wanted to be the person in the room making other people happy. But each of these chefs, they were unreasonable in pursuit of the food they were serving, their product, and relentless in pursuit of innovation. What new ingredients could they cook with? What new techniques could they develop? And so many of those chefs have influenced how restaurants around the world approach cooking. That's when I realized that we could approach it differently. That if they were unreasonable in pursuit of product, we could be unreasonable in pursuit of people. If they were relentless in pursuit of change, we could be relentless in pursuit of the one thing that will never change, which is, I don't care who you are or where you're from, our collective human desire to feel cared for. And so that is how, to feel seen. And that's where unreasonable hospitality came from. And thankfully, I was young enough where I think one of the beautiful things that comes with youth is an unbridled confidence and the ability to take risks. And when you've never lost it all, you're willing to put it all on red, you know, and so that's how it started.
Just to reply, and I'll give the stage to him, is that I heard this, I don't know from whom, but like the best way to make a better product is to look at every bad review and make a product out of those bad reviews, which is exactly like, exactly what you said, reverse engineer the other competitions. Go ahead, Dabai.
Yeah, I'm just so compelled with what you've been saying for the past 20 minutes or so, especially with the first story that your daughter and the dessert guy, because it's almost the same, identical as the hot dog story, but you're now on the side of being served rather than on the serving side, but which I think conveys the message of reasonable hospitality even more stronger than your own story, if that doesn't offend you. And I apologize if it does. I want to go back a little bit to what you just said about the relentless pursuit of taking care of people. And just now you and Jack were talking about looking at the right metrics. And I'm just thinking, what are the right metrics of taking care of people? And because by running the world's #1 restaurant, you must have a very delicate system that makes sure everything go right and beyond right. So how do you train your Dreamweavers so that they can follow a SOP but also go beyond that? What are some of the metrics that you're looking to?
So here's the thing, and this is what I think people struggle to fully embrace. There were more SOPs than you could possibly imagine when it came to excellence, when it came to the food, when it came to the service. Every little technical detail needed to be done in exactly the right way. When it came to the hospitality, there were far fewer SOPs. I mean, the reality was that when you started in a restaurant, you weren't at the front. You weren't the person actually serving the guest for maybe a year or something. I believe culture can't be taught. It needs to be caught, right? Until someone has passed a few seasons within an organization, they don't fully understand what right looks like.
Right.
But once they were, we empowered them. We gave them resources and permission, and we inspired them to go out and do their thing. Now, they would make mistakes often, but every one of those mistakes was an opportunity for them to learn how to do it better the next time. What I found is it could have easily been the case that anytime anyone had an idea, they had to run it past me. But if we had done it that way, a couple things would have proven to be true. One, we wouldn't have done nearly as many of these things as I wanted to do because I would have become a bottleneck.
Right.
And two, one of the most powerful things about this approach to running a business is that the team feels empowered, that they feel trusted, that they recognize the amount of responsibility they have been given and by definition become more responsible. And so we would let them run. But when you let them run, eventually mistakes are going to happen. But I think that's okay. That's a part of doing business. I think as long as you don't yell at someone when they've made a mistake, but rather coach them on how to not make the same mistake again, that's when you realize greatness.
Amazing. That reminds of you. I believe that's something you said in another podcast. You mentioned that sometimes the best time to promote people is before they're ready. And I think just now you kind of already shed light a bit on why that is the case. But I still want to ask you, when is that sometime happen? Like that right moment to promote somebody, or like to actually empower your employee, make sure that they are on the right track?
Well, so, okay, I believe in cultures where you promote from within. I think the best companies are those where you bring people in, you nurture their growth, you give them opportunities to advance. And most people would agree with that. But by definition, if you choose to pursue that kind of culture, you need to promote people before they are ready. Because when is someone ready? They're only ready once they've had the same job in another company. And if you only promote people when they're ready, that means you're basically hiring from other companies into these roles. When you're growing someone, you need to give them a chance to prove you right. And so that's a part of it. If you want to promote from within, you have to promote people before they're ready. Otherwise, you're never going to promote anyone. But the other thing about it is that I don't know if either of you have ever been in this position. And by the way, it doesn't need to be in work. It could be in school or as children of your parents. When someone gives you more responsibility, arguably before you've technically earned it, you are going to work your frickin' butt off to prove them right. Right? That's when you don't want to let them down.
Yeah.
And I found that like, it's a wild thing when you can like stick your neck out for someone else and watch them show you why they deserve it and why you were right to believe in them.
Yeah.
I start to wonder, like, how far can you go to aim for excellence or perfection? Because in a world like fine dining, and then as the top one restaurant of the world, people's expectation is going to be higher. And then can you always make sure that you make people happy? I mean, like we talk about sometimes people are not happy, but you show that you're willing to do anything to make it right. But other than that, I'm just wondering what are something more into being unreasonable and being like boundary pushing to in the pursuit of excellence or even perfection.
I mean, okay, so first, how far you can go in pursuit of excellence. I mean, you can go forever, right? Mm-hmm. Perfection is unattainable. Again, to reiterate what I said before, every business still, even the tech AI companies, still every business is human powered. Human beings are imperfect, which means that perfection is unattainable. It needs to be the pursuit of it that drives you. Because at the end of the day, excellence is thousands of little details executed perfectly. And while you may never be able to be perfect, you can do many things perfectly. And if you find joy in that pursuit, the journey can go on forever. It's a marathon. It is not a sprint. You need to love the run. But yes, expectations are very high, which is why I think hospitality is so powerful, because at the end of the day, when you are more and more and more celebrated, it becomes almost impossible for you to consistently live up to people's expectations of your excellence. But when you're doing little things, like if the two of you were to come into my restaurant and I delivered a very, very excellent experience, maybe you'd leave satisfied. But if I did something that only made sense for the two of you, something that showed that I cared enough to listen and then to do something with what I heard, that is more likely than not going to exceed your expectations, because back to the point of reverse benchmarking, no one else does that. We live in a world that's so focused on efficiency and throughput that people don't take the time to actually slow down for long enough to actually get to know the people they serve so that they can exceed expectations. And that's why I think one of the reasons I believe it is the greatest competitive advantage.
I really want to echo on like one sentence that you said earlier, which is like culture cannot be taught, it can only be caught. I think that's very, very, very inspiring because I'm experiencing similar stage change in my own company. When you first start off, most of your employees are people that carry out like very SOP-driven tasks. And at a certain stage, you have to start giving people tasks that are more open-ended, people that carry out like higher level tasks. That's where I realized like I cannot actually give them a set of like procedures. They have to embrace the culture and know what we will do in that situation and carry out the decision by themselves. But like when you said people's expectation will go higher and higher in hospitality, this resonated with me as a podcaster. Like one thing that we realized throughout the journey of podcasting is like when you are starting off as a small content creator, most of the comments and feedback are positive because like whatever you do, it sort of it exceeds people's expectation because like you have like 10 followers, 10 subscribers, and then you carry out a really good conversation. People will say nice things about the podcast. And then it feels like there's a certain turning point where people realize, oh, you are a established podcaster. You have enough followers that you should carry out very, very inspiring talks, and you have to prepare like your ass off. And sorry for the language, but like it seems like there's a turning point where the expectation becomes harder and harder to meet. And I'm curious if you have the same experience in your career. Like once you reach like a certain benchmark or a certain stage, like the more that you see are the other way around. Like if you do a little mistake, people like exaggerate the mistake by quite a bit, like compared to like when you start off.
Oh, 100%. But by the way, that's what you want. Because if that doesn't happen, it means you're not succeeding. This is true in pretty much every facet of life. Like you look at sports. I love NFL football here in the States. It's like one of my favorite things. And when you look at like the greatest quarterbacks in the league, the better you do, then now suddenly you get to play in college. And if you're really, really good there, now you get signed to the NFL. And if you're really good, now you're starting with the team, right? And if you don't get better and better and better, you will stop winning. Yeah. And in fact, like when you start playing at a higher level in the NFL or whatever, I'm just using a random metaphor, that is what calls you to greatness. That's when suddenly you realize there are things in you that you can actually play at a level you yourself never even imagined being capable of. Some people talk about it almost as if it's like unfair or like this sucks. Now I'm doing well. Now people like really like hold me to a high standard, or they feel really entitled. And no, celebrate it. It just means that you're winning. And so you need to work harder to keep winning. And that's why, by the way, it is so important that you pick a profession that you actually enjoy doing.
Totally.
Because if you really love the work, then it's fun to dig deeper and find a level that you didn't even know existed. If you don't like the work, then the whole process just is draining and depleting. And
yes, I totally agree with like what you said. For us, like now the question becomes, what are the things that only we can do instead of like what other people are doing? Because like at a certain stage, you simply cannot look at what other people are doing to sort of succeed to a further stage.
So we decide to have a conversation with you.
Which is pushing people to do greater and greater.
Yeah.
下一期我们会继续和 Will 对话，你将会听到世界上拥有最多米其林星级餐厅的人，他违背直觉的商业模式，听到如果从未被推到悬崖边，意味着从未找到极限边界，听到严明的纪律和体贴的关怀怎么在世界第一的餐厅里共存，听到什么样的失败与质疑意味着成功。如果你喜欢我们的内容，希望你可以订阅我们，我们努力会把节目做得越来越有价值。让我们下期再见。
Teach me warmth and to dance beneath the pine. So feel it all. So feel it all. There's always more to find. All I know is that the fall is always worth the ride. These summer storms teach me warmth and dance beneath the pine.